Okay, in this video we're going to go over a wrist extensor and finger extensor loading strategy within the context of dorsal wrist pain or wrist impingement when moving into extension, especially if you engage in a lot of weight-bearing activities on your hands, like a lot of push-ups, CrossFit, or even gymnastics and handstands. So oftentimes we get this painful sensation where the forearm meets the carpal bones here. And when rehabbing, we do a lot of open chain activity, which is good for getting some load into the wrist and finger extensors, but we're not conditioning these joints here to experience that compression tolerance, because eventually we need to build that tolerance to compressive loads. So a way I like to do this is incorporating some weight-bearing positioning, but offloading enough so that we can get an adequate amount of stress through the wrist and finger extensors, but without pissing off any of the structures here in the wrist. Now, oftentimes wrist extension functionally does couple with some finger flexion when we go to grip things. And a lot of times with people with wrist extensor weakness, we'll see them grip things in a little bit of wrist flexion because it reduces the demands for the wrist extensors to help out with the gripping strength. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up on a bench and we're going to wrap the fingers around the bench so we're gripping it. And then the contraction here is we're trying to drive this third knuckle toward the elbow. And we're doing so by also gripping down. So it's as if we're trying to tear this bench in half. So I am going to set up in a position, so say I have wrist extension pain around 45 degrees. I want to set up at about 45 degrees or even less back out of that so we can get an adequate stimulus without any pain. And I'm going to apply that gripping force. Now, initially, we're just going to do an isometric hold, where I'm trying to generate a strong enough contraction to where anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds we get some good fatigue here, but it's not too much. If it's too hard of a contraction and we're starting to experience that fatigue around 10-15 seconds, you're going too hard. So we can eventually move into more wrist extension by shifting our weight forward, and then we're getting this intense short-range contraction through the wrist and finger extensors here, while simultaneously gripping down on the bench. I oftentimes like to use this as an eccentric loading strategy as well, where we start in end range, wrist extension, and then move back until we're at a relatively neutral position. So we can do this eccentrically, lowering, and then come off tension, come back to the start, and eventually we can do this for dynamic reps where we maintain consistent tension. And of course you can hold on to a squat rack or a PVC pipe in this hand as well, or even the other side of the bench to support your weight. And you can even lean more into this side to get more compressive loading when you're at the later stage of rehab. So give this exercise a try. If you're in a lot of pain, you may want to do this more frequently to build tolerance at lower intensities. And if you're on later stages of rehab and you're using more of the dynamic reps and eccentric strategies, you can do this less frequently.